Well, good evening and welcome to tonight's Tamils in Public Service, a special event tonight. So glad that you can be here and be part of this evening's event. Lots of good things that will be taking place as we get things started here. And just a couple things that I want to talk to you about before we get too far into tonight's event. One of those things is we're going to be doing some polling, some Q&A as the evening unfolds, and we're going to use Slido to do that. And Slido is a real simple tool. All I'm going to have you do is log in to www.slido.com. That's www.slido.com. That information is available to you right at the bottom of the screen. You can do that on your mobile device. You can do that on a separate web browser or a separate web tab, whatever works best for yourself. And then we're going to use an event ID for tonight of THM J31. THMJ31. This is going to give you all kinds of ability to participate in the polls that'll be coming up later. So I want to make sure that you guys get into there and can participate in the polls that will take place later on tonight. Guys, a couple other things. For those of you that would like to take advantage of the Microsoft Artificial Closed Captioning, we've got that available to you tonight. All you've got to do is move your mouse a little bit on the screen. And when you move your mouse on the screen, you'll see a little CC button. When you see that CC button, if you click on that, you'll start to notice your closed captioning starting to come at the bottom of the screen. Outside of that, I believe that is all the information from myself, and we're going to get things started off by turning things over to our first presenter for tonight. Please welcome Melvin Christopher, and I'll read that correctly, and I apologize for the mess up there, and it's over to you. Good evening.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob and team, for also your support on this event as well, too. Hello and vanakkam to everyone. I welcome you to our 6th Tamil Heritage Month celebration. Traditionally, we host this event in person at Queen's Park, and we really hope that we can get together soon. But in the meantime, we have Team's live event to support us in today's celebration. This is also our first Tamil Heritage Month as a formalized employee network within the Ontario Public Service, and we are incredibly thrilled about that. A pleasure to be here today. My name is Melvin Christopher. I am one of the co-chairs with Tamils in Public Service. In my day job, I'm a senior change management and engagement advisor within the Ministry of the Solicitor General. In my work, I work to modernize correctional services across the province to meet its changing and complex needs. Before we begin, next slide, please. I would like to acknowledge the lands I'm virtually presenting from today. We wish to acknowledge the land which this virtual event is taking place. It is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. It is home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The land is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and the Allied Nations to peacefully care for the resources across the Great Lakes. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit River and the Williams Treaty of 1923. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this island. Today, we recognize and give thanks to the original peoples of this land for the opportunity to work in the community and on this territory. Toronto is home to many Indigenous peoples, settlers, immigrants, and refugees. As a first-generation Canadian myself, our presence on this land shows the intricate and quite complicated interworkings of colonialism and genocide. And we must hold ourselves accountable for the complacency in these actions against Indigenous peoples. These lands have offered us an abundance of shelter and nourishment, and so this land acknowledgement is a mapping of local disposition and local colonization that must be integrated into the consciousness of the work we do as we develop the courage and strength to decolonialize. Next slide, please. So again, I want to thank you all for being here on behalf of Tamils in Public Service. So quick walkthrough of our agenda today. We'll do a welcome from the co-chairs, myself and Jasmine Dunston, and a message from one of our Tamils in Public Service members, Satish, about Tamil Heritage Month. While we're doing this as well, to invite you to use your phone to scan the QR code on the top right there, or go to the Slido code that'll be on the next slide as well too, as we're going through what it means, what Tamil Heritage Month means to us. We'll also have a greeting from executive public servants, including the TiPS executive champions, talk a little bit about the Tamil Youth Fellowship and a message from our partners who are making the program happen, hear from Tamil organizations who are remembering the past, celebrating where we are, and look to the future, and have a special word from the project chair of the Tamil Community Center and conclude with the performance. Next slide, please. What's on the horizon for TiPS? Before I get into a little bit about Tamil Heritage Month, what's on the radar for Tamils in public service? We will be having our OIP workshop. We'll be sharing tips on how to apply to the program next Monday at 6 p.m. So you'll get some tips from TiPS. And I'll ask Lakshmi to drop the link in chat for where you can register for that. In March, we'll be hosting a professional development workshop. April, we'll be launching our mentorship program. And also, we're looking for new volunteers as well, too. We're really looking for folks with great, strong web development and social media background as well, too. But in addition to that, we're constantly looking for folks to join our team as well, too. So again, to stay in the loop, there'll be a link tree in the chat where you can register for these events, join our mailing list, and stay up to date and request to be a volunteer there as well, too. Next slide, please. So the theme of our event today. So why are we here for Tamil Heritage Month? Since 2016, Tamil Heritage Month has been celebrated in January to increase awareness and appreciation for all achievements and contributions of Tamil people. Canadian Tamils have proudly called Canada home since 1960, coming from various parts of South and East Asia, including Sri Lanka, India, Singapore, and Malaysia. These numbers grew dramatically between the late 80s and the early 2000s due to the devastating civil war and genocide in Sri Lanka. In 2016, the census showed us that in Canada is home to the largest Tamil diaspora outside of South Asia, of whom roughly 80% of residents currently reside in the Greater Toronto Area. While many of these Tamils arrived as refugees due to the civil war and genocide, we've seen tremendous amount of resilience and tenacity from the community. Eager to thrive and contribute to positively impacting Canadian society, Tamils have been recognized across professions, whether it be in the public service, as artists, academics, entrepreneurs, or politicians. The list continues to grow. And I'll be hearing from some of these amazing Canadian Tamils today. As Tamil Heritage Month wraps up, for me, during this time of reflection, celebrating our past and looking to our future, I fondly reflect on my time with this organization, Tamils in Public Service. In remembering the past, I think about my journey in the public service and the invaluable role that TiPS has played into getting me where I am today. I remember eagerly reaching out to TiPS as a graduate student because I finally saw an organization made up of successful and supportive peers that look like me. This idea of a shared lived experience gave me a sense of inclusion, and from my first interaction with TiPS, I volunteered soon after, and years later, I'm now one of the co-chairs of TiPS. Thinking about the present, a monumental feat for the organization is now that we are formalized as a distinct employee network within the Ontario Public Service. This provides a more significant opportunity to amplify Tamil voices and access a platform where we can increase the community's ability to make a meaningful impact here in Ontario. And reflecting and looking into the future, we're going to do just that. I'm going to continue to grow our supportive network, increase Tamil representation in government, strengthen our talent development, diversify senior leadership positions, and continue to offer meaningful and representative programming and opportunities to TiPS membership. So you've heard a little bit about what Tamil Heritage Month means to me. I want to flip it back to you folks and hear what it means to you. So we're going to launch that Slido now. So again, the Slido code is THMJ31. So you can go on slido.com and type that in, or you could also take your phone and scan that barcode on the left there, whichever comes to you quicker. So I'll give you a moment to do so. All right, and with that, Rob, I ask you to launch the poll. So the first question we have, just to get you a little bit engaged on how to use Slido, is just, is this your first TiPS event? Just quick yes, no. Cool, so we're getting a bit of a third of the folks here are new, experiencing their first events here with TiPS. So welcome to all the new faces and folks who are interacting with TiPS for the first time. Cool, Rob, and I'll ask you to go to the next one. Perfect. This one is, so you've heard a little bit about what Tamil Heritage Month means to me. Now we kind of want to hear about from you folks. What does Tamil Heritage Month mean to you? And I'll read off a couple of these responses as they come through. So we have diversity, a time of remembrance and celebration, community and fellowship, celebrating community, celebrating the tenacity and ingenuity of the Tamil people, celebrating the unique struggles of the Tamils in the diaspora, ability to share my lived experiences, celebrating my community success, connection, celebrating resiliency, celebration of my culture, reflecting, celebrating and recognition of where we are, sharing with others, proudly celebrating Tamil culture and traditions, being with family. Thank you folks for sharing that, much appreciated. With that, I really want to thank you all for the engagement, and I'm going to pass it on to my co-chair, Jasmine Dunston, who will be joined by TiPS member Satish to talk about Tamil Heritage Month and the origins of the Tamil language. Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you, Melvin. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Dunston, and as Melvin said, I am the other chair of TiPS. I'm a few weeks into my role as the Senior Policy Advisor with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, after supporting the provincial rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in an exciting but intense role as a Senior Policy Advisor in the Office of the Assistant Deputy Minister of Vaccine Strategy, Implementation and Performance within the Ministry of Health's Pandemic Recovery and Response area. I joined TiPS in 2016, first as a general member when the network was launched, and quickly progressed from volunteer to joining the executive team to help plan and lead events such as tonight's. Being a part of the TiPS team stems from my desire to share my Tamil heritage and culture with those around me and make an impact in the OPS and the Canadian public sector at large. I see this as my opportunity to honor the sacrifices of my family, who left the lands that they were familiar with and came to Canada for a better life after facing oppression and displacement due to the ethnic war occurring in their homeland of Sri Lanka. This is also why I, like many Tamils, feel a deep kinship with Indigenous peoples who have let us find a home on their traditional lands. Today I'm here to share a bit about the Tamil language with you. Tamil is the oldest living language of the world. Roman punch mark coins have been found in Keeladi in Tamil Nadu in South India, with Tamil inscriptions on them. Through carbon dating, these coins have been scientifically proven to be from the 6th century BC. These coins also demonstrate the historical business relationships that Tamils had with other nations, including Italy and countries such as Indonesia and China. This historical business relationship with China was recognized in 2019 when the Chinese president visited Tamil Nadu. Tamil is spoken by more than 70 million people across the globe and is an official language in Sri Lanka and Singapore. It has also been recognized as the first and only classical language by the Indian government. Inaugural is a classic Tamil language text consisting of 1,330 short couplets of 7 words each. It is widely considered to be one of the most translated non-religious texts in the world. It has been translated into at least 42 world languages, with about 57 different renderings into the English language alone. As a first-generation immigrant who left Sri Lanka as a toddler, I have spent most of my life in Canada. As such, while I could understand Tamil, my conversational skills were minimal. I learned to speak Tamil as a teenager in order to converse with my paternal grandmother, my Appama. As such, I value the Tamil language as it ties to my personal identity. I'd now like to invite Satish to speak and share his story. He's one of our newest volunteers.
I'm not 100% sure that Satish is in at this stage of the game. Maybe we can come back to that in a little bit. Do we have someone else that we can throw to? Yep. Hi.
Yeah, I could jump in here. Yeah, so maybe we'll jump back to Satish once we get his text sorted. Apologies for that, folks. So we'll wait on Satish to also talk about the Tamil, importance of Tamil and remembering the Tamil language in Tamil as well too, because that is very important to us. I now want to hand it off to our executive champions, Deputy Ministers Renu Kulendran and Deborah Richardson. Before I do so, I want to thank them again for being our executive champions and being a part of TiPS since its inception. As we have formalized as a distinct employee network within the Ontario Public Service, having both of you provide support and guidance has been a huge help for our organization. You two are both extraordinary leaders, both groundbreaking. Renu is the first ever Tamil Deputy Minister in Ontario. She's currently the Deputy Minister of Government and Consumer Services. She has over 32 years of Ontario public service experience in various policy, regulatory, licensing, enforcement, and program delivery environments across several ministries, including education, labor, training and skills development, and cabinet office. She most recently was the Associate Deputy Minister of Service Ontario at the Ministry of Government Consumer Services. Deputy Deborah Richardson was the first ever Indigenous woman to serve as Deputy Minister within Ontario Public Service. She's currently the Deputy Minister within the Treasury Board Secretariat, and she served the highest levels of public service in Canada, from her role and previously being served as the Deputy Solicitor General of Correctional Services and also the Deputy Minister of Indigenous Affairs. Deborah is a seasoned intergovernmental affairs executive and Indigenous relationships expert. I value the opportunity as the chair to interact with the both of you and learn from you. So I pass the floor to you, Deputy Kulendran, if you can kick it off before handing it off to Deputy Richardson. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. And good evening to everyone who's joined. Vanakkam. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful event. It's really a genuine privilege to be here and to join you in commemorating Tamil Heritage Month, which is a very special and personal one for me. And Melvin, you mentioned it's the 6th year that TiPS has gathered to celebrate Thai Pongal and Tamil Heritage Month, and that it is the first time that we've come together to celebrate Tamil Heritage Month since becoming an official employee network. And it's the first time that I'm privileged to be a deputy co-sponsor, and I'm really so pleased to be sharing this responsibility with Deputy Richardson, who has been a huge TiPS champion for many, many years. So I want to thank everybody who contributed to the efforts to make TiPS an official employee network, because I know it's been a lot of organization and work, and it's just such a wonderful feeling to be here. So what does Tamil Heritage Month mean to me? For me, it's an important opportunity to reflect on our history, our collective history as a diaspora, both personal and cultural, but it's also much more than that. It's a chance to get together to celebrate the strength, the dedication and kindness of ourselves and our community as we embrace the possibilities ahead. And it's also a time to remember that being proudly Tamil and the key contributors in our municipalities, provinces, and in country that have connected us together, and that being part of a community is something that is in our nature. And so it's also about how we can collectively work with other parts of our community and other networks to support Ontarians more generally. So in my work, and I draw from the learnings and support I have from my family and my community. So as many of you know, I am ethnically Sri Lankan Tamil. But I was born in Malaysia. And like many of you, I am separated from some of my family, and because of COVID have not had a chance to see many of my aunts and uncles and cousins, so have relied a lot on technology to enable me to stay closely grounded and connected to them. And I do draw strength and resilience from my relationship to them and my ability to connect, but I do miss them. So it's a key part of why I feel so privileged to be part of TiPS, because it does remind me of family and community. And I feel personally supported through the connection I have with many of you, the TiPS community and the collective heritage that we share. There are many people who I count as friends and colleagues who I would not know except for meeting them through TiPS. I've learned so much about the diversity of our experiences as Tamil Canadians, how we've overcome hardship, loss, racism, and survived. We are survivors. We're a thriving community that remembers the lessons of the past, the genocide that we've witnessed and endured, and become connected through our collective determination to improve public services in our communities. Our Tamil voices add to the quality of government services delivered to the public. By being proud and open with our heritage in areas that decide the policies and practice that govern us all, and that lens that we bring in developing inclusive public services. We encourage those decisions to arrive with greater consideration and understanding of the lived experiences of all people. And I think that's a key part of my hope for the legacy that we're building as a community and as an organization, that we are building something for future generations. And as Melvin indicated in his own personal story of his journey over the past 6 years, it is really something that we're starting to see the rewards for that that investment of the individuals who brought us together. And I'm so happy to see Kumaran here on screen today, because he's been such a champion of this organization. We're creating a greater voice with greater opportunities for Tamil people in our communities, and we see it today through the programs and services that TiPS is involved with, from the Skills Development Workshop Series to the Youth Fellowship Program. The investments in our community and our future are paying off, and they're building knowledge, skills, experience, and most important, opportunity for many in our community, and for many more broadly as we work through the Diversity Council and with other networks to build an inclusive public service. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing in this regard, working with other OPS and other networks to address anti-Indigenous and Black racism and homophobia. We are all stronger together. So it's really important that we find these moments to stop and celebrate the importance of the work that we're doing and of our community and our voice. And that's also how we thank those that came before us and acknowledge each other and inspire those that follow. And so that's why tonight is so special for me. So thank you for letting me be a part of this organization, and keep up the incredible work. Thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of this evening.
Thanks, Deputy. Deborah, over to you.
Deborah, Deputy, you just happen to have your mic on mute at this moment in time, so I'm going to give you a second to. There you go. It's now off of mute, so you can start talking away.
Did you notice it went on and off, on and off?
I did.
Nin Delawisi, Wabano Nungaskwe, Delewe Wibigijuik. Good evening, everyone. My spirit name is Eastern Star Woman, and my colonial name is Deborah Richardson. And Melvin, thank you for the traditional opening. And Jasmine, thank you so much for hearing all those teachings about the Tamil language. You know, it really struck a chord with me personally, because Indigenous languages are being lost, you know, right across the entire country here. And just to speak about languages and the origin, it really meant a lot to me and struck a chord. Really happy to be celebrating here. Renu and I and many of the people here were at the very first session 6 years ago, when it was an idea at the where was that restaurant? Right at the, it closed down.
The Hard Rock, right?
The Hard Rock Cafe. And, you know, just seeing members of the Tamil community on the panel and speaking about their lived experiences of working in the public service, and just watching how proud everybody in the audience was to be able to see themselves as senior leaders is really powerful. And, you know, the theme of this year's event is just awesome. Remembering the past, celebrating our present, and looking to the future. So many of you have probably heard about the 7-generation principle. So in Anishinaabe teachings, people think that 7 generations is 7 generations ahead, and it's actually not. We're in the middle. Our great-grandparents behind us, and then our great-grandchildren ahead of us, that's 7 generation. And so that's why even the title, Remembering the Past, right? Renu spoke about even her connections to even though she wasn't born, that's her background is that, and she has all of her family there. And, you know, thinking about the struggles and the challenges that our great grandparents had, and then what's going to happen forward for our grandchildren and all the work that we do to make this world a better place. It's our responsibility, and it's in our power actually, to be able to make change and drive change. And, you know, when I even look at just the people here on the panel and everyone here, we all have a responsibility, and we have to take that responsibility very seriously, you know, for that very reason. So our lives and our perspectives for each of us, each and every one of us, carry the lessons and dreams of those who came before us. And every single action that we do impacts someone that we will never meet, someone generations from now. That's pretty powerful when you think about it. A person in the present is a community action. And when I look at the work of Tamils in the OPS, for example, I see this embodiment in actually what they're actually doing, both inside and outside the OPS. I see a group of people who ask daily, how can I be of service to my community and to others? And all of us are doing that. And, you know, I recently wrote a blog speaking about Ogichita. You know, the words chief and leader in Ojibwe are actually those who serve others. And so really all of us have the role of Ogichita. I see Nish on the line. Him and I have been on a couple of calls today. You know, and he's the Ogichita of the PO Police, and that is the person who is the leader to serve others. And that's what I view myself in the role as a deputy minister as well. I see a community drawing from its shared values to invest in the next generation. That's what we're doing here through really important projects, you know, and Renu spoke about those, the fellowship program and the community building through art and celebration, even hearing the beautiful song when we all logged on. It just put us all in the place that we needed to be at today. And it's through stuff like that that we're going to make this place a better place. You know, as a Mi'kmaq woman, my career in the public service, the decisions I make and the projects I pursue are rooted in my culture and the reclamation of that culture. And that's how all of us should be. It's about drawing a little place on the sand about what our place is in this world. And every single person should feel comfortable doing this. I was at a meeting this week with the Black executives in the OPS. And I can't tell you, for those of you who don't know, my daughter is First Nations and Black. I called her downstairs. I sent her a text. She came and sat beside me. I said, look at the screen. She didn't know what she was doing. And it was a sea of Black executives. She was emotional about it, to actually see herself. And that's what I saw when people saw Renu and others on the panel, to be able to see themselves. And that's what we're here to do. You know, our roots make us better at who we are and what we do. And Tamil Heritage Month is an opportunity for everyone to learn and to celebrate those roots that have nourished and informed the contributions of Tamils across the world, and across Canada, across all of our communities. And these contributions, big or small, that form a beautiful and essential part of the societal fabric that we live in. It's a chance to celebrate Tamil excellence embodied by the many speakers even here today. And even as we socially distance, Jasmine, I think you referred to our face-to-face at Queen's Park, you know, great food, great company, but it's a reminder still of the power of community, which continues to thrive even at a distance when it comes together in purpose. And it's also about just having fun, learning. The future is still unwritten, but collectively it's been a hard time for all of us. We've been tempted into thinking the future may not be a bright one, some of us, right? Like, it's been hard. We've had deaths, we've had tragedies, we've had, you know, it's stressful. We've got little kids running around the house that aren't in school. We've got dogs, we've got pets, we got things going on. Some of us are working front line. There's lots of things happening, but still, as humankind, we're still getting together. We still have that hope. And, you know, it's really the gifts from our roots that help give us that hope. And it's a celebration of, today is about a celebration of language, art, and beauty, and building the future for the 7 generations. So it's such an honor to be here today. It's such an honor to be brought into this circle. And I loved whoever wrote in the chat, to have allies with First Nations communities is really important and a priority, because there are a lot of similarities from what's happened to the Tamil community and the First Nations community. So thank you so much, Wolaluk, and it's a real honor to be here. Can't wait to hear from everyone else.
Well, thank you both deputies. We genuinely really appreciate having the both of you, and you know, we hope to continue in the legacy of your works as well too, and making sure, you know, we have future Tamil Indigenous deputies as we continue to progress in our careers as well too, and the future of the OPS as well too. So again, thank you so much. Next, I want to welcome the Chief of Police for the Peel Region, Nishan Duraiappah. He's the first ever police chief of Tamil background and one of the top police roles in North America, and he's been a key leader in public safety throughout Ontario. I really want to thank you on behalf of TiPS for being here, Chief, and with that, I'll pass it over to you. You're still on mute there.
And I think it's just a mute on your own computer, because I see your mic is not muted. Oh, there you go. I just saw you light up. Nope. I think it's got to be on your computer because you're not muted in Teams. Melvin, I believe that we can come back there if that would be possible, and that gives some chance to figure out that microphone, and we'll come back to you, and then maybe we can move to the next situation and or part of the presentation, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, no problem, no problem. Yeah, well, we'll give a moment to the chief to sort out the tech issue there. I'll introduce Dr. Mayoorendra. He's the emergency physician at the Scarborough Health Network and lecturer at University of Toronto. In addition to treating COVID-19 patients in the emergency department over the last 2 years, he's been working at COVID-19 vaccination clinics in Scarborough, leading culturally specific clinics and information sessions for the Tamil community and to educate and improve vaccination uptake within the community. We really appreciate the strong efforts you've been doing within the community, and with that, Doctor, I pass it over to you.
Thank you, Melvin. First of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you to the Hamilton Public Service really for this opportunity to talk today. Again, there's so many accomplished people with a lot of really diverse backgrounds here. So as Melvin said, I'm an emergency physician at the Scarborough Health Network. I'm just going to speak a little bit about my experiences, kind of why I went into this role, and especially kind of focusing on the last couple of years and how I guess things have changed my perspectives a little bit. So when I made the decision to go into healthcare, it was obviously for the love of medicine and science, but it was also about public health and education. And really, most of all, I always saw myself working in Scarborough, where I grew up. I was born in Sri Lanka, but I spent most of my life in Scarborough. I did most of my schooling in Scarborough, including my undergraduate education, where I went to U of T Scarborough. So being able to come back to the community and give back to the Tamil community was something that I really wanted to do. And even when I didn't know my exact direction, I always thought that I would come back and work in Scarborough. So these past few years when I've had that opportunity has been really rewarding. And when the pandemic started, one of the first things that we noticed in Scarborough, and this is for many reasons that we can kind of go on about, but the Tamil community and the South Asian community was being disproportionately affected, again, for a lot of reasons. And we realized a few other the Tamil-speaking physicians in Scarborough and other organizations realized that we had the opportunity and the responsibility to really change that. Where there was at one point in the pandemic where more than 50% of the ICU was filled with our people from our community, and that again, when in a pandemic where there was ways of alleviating a lot of this, we felt like we weren't doing a very good job of it, and we realized that the primary issue here was our lack of knowledge and knowledge dissemination. As healthcare professionals, we had this ability, but we weren't really doing a good job of it. So we took the opportunity to work with various community groups and politicians and media to disseminate some of this information through social media or even town halls, where we could try to address questions and kind of alleviate people's concerns. I was involved with the vaccine clinics in Scarborough from a very early stage, so that it involved when the vaccines first started coming out and we were vaccinating healthcare workers. But when we started in March and April to vaccinate the general population, I was at the mass vaccination clinic at Centennial College in the first few days, and it was kind of shocking to see that despite being basically in the heart of Scarborough with a very diverse population, we really weren't seeing that population represented in the people coming to get the vaccine. And obviously this was at a point where everyone needed to get vaccinated, and everyone, the more people, the better it was. But we realized that we were not doing something right if we started to see that the community that we were set up in wasn't getting vaccinated. So I approached the Scarborough Health Network at that time I proposed that we can try to set up these culture-specific pop-up vaccine clinics, where we try to get these vaccine clinics into the community and try to address it from a more of a grassroots level, where we can try to address some of the healthcare access issues. So we all know that for a lot of people who grew up in minority populations, that healthcare access is as big an issue as really anything else when it comes to actual healthcare, and their experiences within the healthcare system changes their overall health. And this is where I was grateful that the Scarborough Health Network kind of fully supported us organizing a Tamil-specific community pop-up clinic back in April, and then from there, that was used as a model to reach out to basically all cultures and religious groups to try to get the vaccines to the communities there. And we use the physicians and nurses from those backgrounds to try to get them to help connect with that community. And it did work really well. And I think we can see that we saw the vaccination rates really shoot up as the months went on. And that was something that I was grateful for as a hospital, that they kind of took that ownership. And again, just speaking a little bit about the pandemic in general and where we're at in terms of our responsibilities and following the public health guidelines. I think we're 2 years in, and we've all seen in the media people's I guess people are frustrated, kind of trying to move on to, just accepting it. Okay, this is what it is, and we need to move on. And I think, overall, we have a social responsibility, and that hasn't ended yet. The guidelines will continue to change, and I think as more and more people get vaccinated, people will get more and more comfortable. But in the meantime, we have to realize that the pandemic is a time where our individual choices has a much bigger impact on society, and the implications are pretty big. And so this is where it goes from beyond individual choices affecting only individuals to individual choices affecting affecting a larger community. And vaccinations is big on that list right now, but we still have this responsibility with masks and physical distancing, and especially in large crowds, as we keep coming up with new waves of different variants of concern. I think the guidelines will change, and it's our responsibility as a community, as a population, to keep adapting to that, despite it being frustrating. And I think healthcare workers can definitely empathize with that and also feel that, because I think our personal lives have changed, but also our work lives have changed as a result of this pandemic. And overall, I just want to finish out by saying, looking into the future, going beyond the pandemic, I think we, especially in the Tamil community, I think I'm hoping we can change how we view healthcare and how we look at preventative health, not just, again, during a pandemic. We can talk about preventative health with vaccines, but it goes much far beyond that into, education, diet, exercise, preventative health checks, and screening tests, and all of those things that I really think that it's lacking, and I think we again, healthcare professionals have not done an adequate job of educating and sharing that knowledge to try to improve that. And again, what I realized especially working with Scarborough Health Network to organize some of these clinics, is that as an organization, there is a responsibility that hospitals have to really reach out to the community in which they serve. And I think, again, it's a big endeavor, and it's something that when it's revolving on one subject like vaccines, it's a little bit easier. But when it comes to communicating in different languages and addressing different cultures and different disease conditions, it is much more difficult and requires a lot more work. But I think this is the way for organizations and the community to build mutual trust and have a relationship that can, again, have a big impact when at a time during something like a pandemic, where it's easy to work together to address the issues. So I'll finish off with that. And again, thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I really look forward to seeing what we can continue to build as we grow, and as a Tamil community. And again, as an organization, I'm grateful that organizations like this exist, where I think we have the opportunity about speaking about things like this, and things about where we can, people have shared, like was already discussed, shared experiences and shared backgrounds that we can talk about these kinds of things. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to what everyone else has to say.
Thanks, Dr. Mayo. Yeah, we really appreciate your efforts within the community as well too. I remember when we were sharing it with the TiPS page as well too, had a couple colleagues and aunts and uncles actually go to the clinic as well too. So we really appreciate your efforts around vaccination uptake, and obviously working throughout the pandemic for over 2 years now. So thank you for all your efforts. And now I think Chief Nishan his microphone is working, so I'll pass the floor to him now. Chief, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Melvin. Can you hear me this time?
Yeah, we're good.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. I changed devices, and this one actually makes me look taller, so I'm happier with this option. I apologize for the inconvenience, and Vanakkam, and I first of all want to thank OPS and TiPS for extending the invitation for me to join you this evening. Really have appreciated the conversations over the years. I just want to, say to the executive sponsors, Deputy Ministers Kulendran and Richardson, who I am privileged to call peers of mine, and I've appreciated their voice over the last several years. But to all of you as volunteers for bringing this together, I remember attending the Hard Rock when, at that time, there was no equivalent in the policing sector for anybody to professionally connect with those in public service. So I want to commend you for the journey that you have traveled, and to this point where you are now an official employee network. So that was a fantastic thing to hear. And, just to provide greetings to all of you, and thinking about what Tamil Heritage Month means and our Tamil culture means, I've really been reflecting because, when I started policing 27 years ago, I knew the other Sri Lankan period police officer in the GTA, and it really never existed beyond that. And we've come to a point where there are easily close to 70 or 80 Tamil men and women who have chosen a field in public safety, and really an amazing journey considering, I was finger waved to become a doctor, accountant, engineer, and here we are. But just on a serious note, I think more than the networking, the advocacy, and promoting professional development, I think what's important for all of us as a point of encouragement to everybody who is here this evening, and it's a remarkable list of those that obviously we can't see but are on the call, is the ability to leverage our cultures to enhance our professions and public service. It means that we're actually making real connections with each other and our communities through relationships. And I think, you know, I do believe that the relationships are one of the most important things that we can, you know, strengthen about just being able to gather here this evening. It's not only just within public service, but within our community. I think we all agree that no matter what our culture, whether it be Tamil or otherwise, we have to ask ourselves what we can do for our communities, you know, your faith, your culture, but also what we can do within, you know, public service to promote our professions. And, you know, I think, you know, these are the important elements that rise to the occasion. I also think the second thing that I think about when I reflect on, you know, Tamil culture and Tamil heritage is the concept of being flexible but being bold. You know, you think of many of our communities have really taken a step outside of what we normally have been used to culturally, even historically. And, you know, the experiences that we get from focusing on relationships and being bold are such a platform. And Deborah, I think, you know, you said, you know, we've all been challenged to seek opportunities to drive further. And Renu, you kind of, you know, hit on that as well. I completely agree. And so, you know, not letting opportunities pass each other by is a significant concept. And the act of helping others in our community, in public service, in the Tamil community, is actually an act of helping ourselves. And the value of relationships is really what makes us stronger. And so, you know, I just really encourage all of us to seek opportunities that way. I know coming to Peel, I would never have conceived taking on a leadership role in the middle of a pandemic, post George Floyd, everything geopolitical, localized incidents. But, you know, these two golden threads are what I tell my team every time, is we need to step out and do things differently, you know, focusing on providing services to our community that has a human rights centric lens, and acknowledging where, you know, as a keeper of my system, where I can deconstruct systemic barriers that have, you know, I think Dr. really hit it on how each of our systems is, you know, flows into each other, but we're responsible for seeking out the systemic barriers that prohibit, you know, our true connection with people, community, even our own employees. So, you know, with that, I want to say, you know, have a wonderful night. Thank you again for allowing me to join and to say hello on behalf of Peel Regional Police and, of course, all the Tamil and South Asian officers in policing. Vanakkam and Nandri.
Thank you, Chief. And yeah, we know you have an incredibly tough job, and we really also appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us today as well too. And you were at the Hard Rock even before my day as well too. So you've been a part of TiPS longer than I have. So kudos to you for that as well. With that, I would like to introduce former Chair of TiPS, Rashani, who's also now the Vice Chair and Director of Strategy, to come talk to you about our work with the Tamil Youth Fellowship. Rashani, over to you.
Great, thank you, Melvin, and hello, everyone. Really happy to be here as part of the TiPS organization, but also to talk about a project that I have been personally supporting in my capacity with TiPS, which I think really embodies what TiPS endeavors to do as an organization, advocating for greater substantive representation in public service organizations, and thinking about expanding our scope beyond just the province to reach across our many municipalities and other public service bodies. And this one in particular, starting with the City of Toronto. So the Tamil Youth Fellowship is a program powered by the Urban Alliance on Race Relations and is a partnership between our organization and the Tamil Canadian Centre for Civic Action. Some of you may know that the Urban Alliance, as part of this diversity fellowship program, also has a Black, Muslim, and Filipino youth fellowships as well. So we are one of several sort of fellowship streams that are a part of this overall program. And really this program aims to provide young people with the access to tools, training, mentorship, and a paid opportunity to create a positive impact in municipal public service. Part of this program includes an intensive training component where fellows participate in workshops and discussions around topics such as policy development, media and communications, anti-racism and anti-oppression, a little bit of a municipal government 101, and several other relevant topics that prepare them for a 12-week paid placement working with a counselor's office at the City of Toronto. So over the course of this program, they are also given resources to complete a self-led community project focused on bridging the gap between the municipal government and the Toronto Tamil community. And last year, there were some very interesting and relevant projects completed on topics such as improving public consultations, strengthening Indigenous partnerships between with the Tamil community, increasing representation in public appointments and in public service opportunities, and resources to better understand and unpack the call to defunding the police. So we are excited to announce that this year's 2022 fellowship is a go, and there are 4 new talented fellows who are currently undergoing intensive training and will begin their placements in February alongside this year's cohort of Black Youth Fellows. And we're really looking forward to seeing what the community projects these individuals end up pursuing and how this opportunity propels them into a future in public service and community leadership. So we are fortunate to be able to execute for another year, and that is thanks to the support of steering committee members that we have for this fellowship. We have advisors, mentors, and most importantly, the sponsors who help to make this happen. Because this program is entirely community powered, meaning that we shape the program, we shape the direction, and we also help to fund the placements. And with that, we have some very special people who have been following along with the fellowship and supporting it in their various capacities, who'll be sharing a few words about this fellowship. And to start, I want to introduce Initha Subramaniam, who is a board member of the Tamil Canadian Centre for Civic Action. Initha identifies as a cisgendered Tamil woman treaty person on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. She began her teaching career in Sydney, Australia as a secondary teacher before she joined the John C. Yes-No Education Centre team located in Ibamatung, Fort Hope, Northern Ontario. Initha has held various roles such as secondary and elementary educator, performance plus teacher, teacher liaison with the Equity Department of York Region District School Board. She is currently a vice principal. She arrived on Turtle Island as a refugee from Ulam. Having lost family, friends in the genocide further ignited her passion and duty to dismantle systemic racism, to uplift and empower the most marginalized and oppressed communities. As a board member of the Tamil Canadian Centre for Civic Action, she continues to fulfill her mission to serve the Tamil diaspora on Turtle Island in various capacities. Initha, it's a pleasure to have you here as part of Tamil Civic Action. Please, over to you.
Okay. Thank you and Vanakkam. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm extremely nervous. This is my first time at TiPS. If I make mistakes, my apologies. Again, I was provided a few questions. I'll do my best to answer and incorporate the Tamil Youth Fellowship piece from TCCA. So as others have mentioned prior, prior and in my bio, like I did arrive on Turtle Island as a refugee in my teens from Ulam. I remember trying hard to, to blend into the crowd, trying to, anglicize my name, practice a Eurocentric accent, things to hide my identity. I tried my best. I struggled to unpack who I was, where I belong. It was later on in my adult life, as mentioned, that I had this amazing opportunity to go and spend some years in an Indigenous community in Northern Ontario, Ibamatung, is where I got helped and I received the healing that I needed, and I started to embrace my identity. So for me, my identity is not limited to just for a month, and the work that we do with the Tamil community is not just limited to a month, that it does not end on January 31st. So my Tamil identity reminds me of all those who have sacrificed their lives in Ulam trying to establish sovereignty. So again, when we, when I hear the land acknowledgement, it is it speaks to the core of me, because I stand here today as a landless person, right? And I understand the duty that I have to make sure that I stand in solidarity, and not just stand in solidarity, but work to achieve that sovereignty for our indigenous communities. I feel Tamil Heritage Month helps us get further connected to identities. So when I joined my school board as an educator, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to work with former trustee Initha, who started the initial planning process for Tamil Heritage Month in 2010. It gave us an opportunity to start to see ourselves as more than refugees. I realized that Tamils are descendants of Queen Nachiyar, Veera Thalapathy Kuili from the Sangam period, who defeated the British to capture her lands. That my ancestors were kings such as Rajaraja Cholan, Suryavarman, Karigalan, Ellalan, among many others. That our language is one of the oldest practicing languages. And as a Tamil Canadian Center for Civic Action board member, I feel that that's what we do. We serve the Tamil community so that we are able to maintain the sovereignty of identities on Turtle Island. As mentioned earlier, the Tamil Youth Fellowship, the city, is one of the many programs facilitated by TCCA to empower our youth. Graduates of the program have had the opportunity to collaborate with city councillors to identify the challenges of limited outreach around civic engagement with our youth from marginalized communities. Our youth fellows drafted a motion to put forward to council seeking a review of the demographic composition of public appointees and applicants. Our fellows consulted with culturally responsive community partners and youth to increase access and awareness to the public appointments process for youth across underserved and underrepresented communities. Our fellows, through their work, are amplifying the voices that have been systematically silenced. Our fellows continue to work on enhancing culturally responsive community resources by unpacking the role of the police in Indigenous genocide, the role in anti-Black racism, and the experiences with the Tamil communities. Our fellows are dismantling the model minority myths as they ignite their passion to become change agents. We are empowering the next generation leaders to stop being non-partisan bystanders, but to become social justice upstanders, as we say it in our education system. So TCCA, a Tamil Canadian Center for Civic Action, collaborates also with many school boards to co-plan, co-facilitate workshops for students, staff, communities throughout the school year. So we have youth from TCCA that are actually collaborating, planning, co-facilitating workshops, curriculum pieces for our school boards. We just wrapped up our Education Expo on Saturday, which brought Tamil educators from school boards across Ontario along with Tamil families and students to collaborate, share, discuss, and learn from each other throughout various workshops. And that is our fourth Education Expo. Our school-based workshop conferences, lesson plans, provides opportunities for Tamil children to learn more about their heritage and identity so that they are knowledgeable about who they are and the richness of their ancestry, so that they know who Periyar is, who Annai Poobadi is, Dr. Reddy, and their contributions towards upholding equity and inclusivity. TCCA provides many professional development for staff so that they have a better understanding of the students in their classrooms, to challenge the implicit biases they carry, to dismantle systemic racism so that our Tamil families have a place at all planning tables and their voices are heard and acknowledged. The various events for our elders, knowledge keepers provides us another opportunity to hear their stories, for them to share their experiences, what they would like us to carry forth and share with the next generation so that their voices continue to resonate, so that our knowledge keepers walk with us always. TCCA has always collaborated with many different organizations, such as Tamil Nadu Multicultural Canadian Association, which reminds us that being Tamil is not monolithic. Tamil heritage is not monolithic, that Tamils identify as, have intersectionalities, that we have Tamil Muslims, we have Tamil of various Tamil folks that identify as towards LGBTQ communities. Right? Our Pudiyappa mental health and wellness sessions provides folks from all age groups, sexual orientation, genders to join in discussion on addressing intergenerational trauma, which is rooted in our communities. Today, as an educator, as a volunteer, every day I learn something new. Public service service goes both ways. I serve the community, in return I grow as a person, and that's what we believe our work through TCCA helps enriching lives of our youth so that they become even far greater than who they are, right? Through our public service, I hope we are able to dismantle oppressive systems and perpetuate the cycle of, and stop perpetuating the cycle of poverty, racism, homelessness, homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Asian racism, anti-Indigenous racism, systemic, ableism, shadism, casteism, and the list goes on, right? So as Periyar said, right, unakku perume vendumanalum, unakku utshagam vendumanalum, pira manidanukku thondu seivadil potti poduvade moolam thedi kollalam ende, right? If you don't know who Periyar is, I suggest go learn about him, right? I feel it's important for Tamils to learn about their heritage so that they understand the identities and the intersectionalities, so that they are able to understand about what Kuladi is, how rich and deep-rooted our identity is. And that's the work, I just shared small bits of what TCCA does, and there's much greater, there's a whole lot of other work that we do, and that is, again, glimpse of what we do. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you so much, Initha. It was really nice to hear about, what Tamil Civic Action does, but also, hear a little bit about what you do as an educator and someone who works in public sector, and really want to acknowledge and commend the perspectives and the unique lenses that you bring into your work, really being person-centered and equity-focused. It's people like you that are making a difference, serving the public. So it was really nice to hear you sort of speak from the heart. I really enjoyed it, and no, you didn't seem nervous at all, Initha. And with that, I do want to actually, pass it over to Kaushika. Kaushika was actually one of the fellows from our first and initial cohort of Tamil Youth Fellows. So it's a great transition to hear from someone who has experienced the program firsthand. So just to share a little bit about Kaushika, Kaushika Vinotheeswaran is an environmental planner at Dylan Consulting with a passion for intersectional environmentalism and sustainable development. She is currently pursuing her master's in environmental science at X University. Kaushika was a part of the inaugural cohort of the Tamil Youth Fellowship with the City of Toronto, working in the office of Mayor John Tory. She is also committed to supporting the growth and development initiatives for the Tamil diaspora through her work with TiPS and Conduit. Kaushika strives to engage in community-based projects that promote equitable and inclusive engagement for equity-deserving groups to empower sustainable community development. Welcome, Kaushika.
I don't know if you can hear me. Okay.
Loud and clear, yep.
Hi, everyone. Happy Tamil Heritage Month. My name is Kaushika Vinotheeswaran, and it's a pleasure to be here today. As Roshani mentioned, I was a part of the inaugural cohort of the Tamil Youth Fellowship, and let me just start by saying that this program has significantly shaped my understanding of government, politics, policymaking, and what it means to be a public servant. The beginning of the fellowship, is committed to training sessions that were focused on developing our skill sets and our knowledge. These sessions educated us on political frameworks, public service, community organizing, advocacy, and networking. And each of the fellows, there were 5 of us, we were all paired up with a mentor who provided us with one-on-one support and helped guide us in goal setting, as well as professional, personal, and project development. And then came the placement where I was placed in the office of Mayor John Tory as a counselor's aide. I was able to support the work of the constituency and outreach teams. The work that I did involved managing constituents' correspondence, learning about the residents in the city, the types of issues that are impacting them, the city's response to ongoing and emerging issues. And this placement allowed me to engage with stakeholders and community members in racialized and diverse communities on a wide range of issues. And that allowed me to translate the knowledge of the nature of constituent concerns to corresponding policy positions and the approaches taken by the city in addressing these problems. As well as a part of the fellowship program, I also took on a project of my own. The goal was to address an outstanding social need within the Tamil community. My project was aimed to better engage the Tamil community in the public consultation process and create a more readily available pathway for the city to implement an equitable consultation process. And through the development of my project, I better understood how policymaking plays a significant role in community engagement and how to better encourage local residents to become more involved in community matters and outlining the importance in doing so. I would say overall this fellowship has played a very significant role in my professional and personal development, providing me with tools and the access to tools and opportunities that have helped me create a positive impact in both public service and for the Tamil community. Since completing the fellowship, I've begun working as an environmental planner in the private sector. Jumping from the public sector to the private sector for me is a means to diversify my experience, but having that public sector experience from working at the city has only improved my breadth of knowledge in managing governmental affairs and communications for my current position. This fellowship serves as a cornerstone for Tamil youth in bridging the gap between our community and governance. A lot of our day-to-day activities and our livelihoods can all be connected back to policymaking and the services provided to us as a result. However, we all have unique lived experiences, especially those of us who are people of color and from equity-deserving communities. Having representation in government from those who understand our experiences and needs makes a significant difference in obtaining access to essential services and amenities that may not be a consideration for someone who doesn't have those similar lived experiences. Working in public service means that you have the decision-making capability to support community growth and change the way that people live. Communal growth and development are very deeply rooted in policy, and they're a matter of including diverse ideologies and perspectives that can make a significant difference in policy implementation and the results after that. As an urban planner, my understanding of development, community-based development, stems from the foundational knowledge that planning is built on, which is the importance of consultation and community engagement. As knowledgeable as a planner can be about the concepts of developing healthy communities, we can't plan for a community without understanding the community's needs. And I think this ideology strongly applies for working in public service, regardless of the type of work that you do, and who better in understanding our community's needs and policymaking than one of our own. And having diverse representation is extremely important in politics and government. And I think this fellowship is an excellent way for Tamil youth to do exactly that and be provided guidance to succeed along the way to help create meaningful change for our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaushika, for sharing that. And no, I promise we did not pay her to say that. But it has been really wonderful to sort of follow along Kaushika's journey, both in her contributions as part of TiPS, but also as a fellow of this program. Hearing Kaushika speak, it excites me to think about how this public service is changing and the types of people that we are welcoming into this organization. People who aren't, afraid to bring all of their perspectives and who they are as a person into the work that they do, so that not only are we going out there engaging with communities, we are the community that is a part of shaping the way that we design policies, programs, and services. So that really excites me to see more people like Kaushika who are interested in the public sector. And as an organization, it's on us to find ways to keep good people in this organization. So something that I reflect on personally, if I could share. So adding to the network of support that comes with this fellowship program is our sponsors and advisors for this fellowship. This program would simply not be possible or even existing without the support of our advisors and sponsors. As mentioned, it is completely funded and supported by community members. And we're very fortunate to have the sponsorship of Kubesh Navaratnam from the Nava Wilson law firm, and Murali Srinaran Das, the executive chairman of 369 Global Inc. So to share a little bit about that partnership and the sponsorship that's been provided to this fellowship and the importance of sponsoring programs like this, we have Kumaran Nadesan, who will be speaking on behalf of the Srinaran Das Foundation as a special advisor to the foundation. So over to you, Kumaran.
Thank you, Roshani. so many hats, so little time. Vanakkam, Anavarakam Vanakkam. I actually had more formal remarks prepared, so this is on my feet very quickly. Just bringing greetings on behalf of the Sri Narayana Das Foundation. Murali Sri Narayana Das, the chair of the foundation, sends his regrets. He had technical difficulties and he's not feeling well either, so he asked me to say a few words. For those of you who may not be aware, the Sri Narayana Das Foundation is a registered private foundation in Canada. The philanthropic leadership from the family stems from a 100-year legacy that began many years ago, well, 100 years ago, I guess, in Jaffna, Sri Lanka. The foundation now being taken forward by Murali and his generation of the family is focused on 4 key pillars: civic engagement, healthcare, education, and the creative arts. Civic engagement being a key pillar of the foundation. The foundation came on board with the Urban Alliance on Race Relations and the Tamil Civic Action to be the major program sponsor for the Tamil Youth Fellowship and the Filipino Youth Fellowship. In some ways, this is a very small town. It's nice to see Kaushika here, who was previously at Conduit, Murali, who is also serving on the Conduit leadership team. As far as I know and care, it's all Conduit anyways. It's an incredible fellowship program. We've had the opportunity to not just talk to the Tamil Youth Fellows, but the Filipino Youth Fellows as well, and just the incredible breadth of work that's going on, the rigor in which the architects of the program thought through the training, through the placement, and just a phenomenal thing. And it's really personally gratifying to see Tamils in public service and Roshani, who I look up to, lead this from the front. So this is incredible. I'm also pleased to share that the Sri Narayana Das Foundation is coming on board again to support this year's fellowship, and they're extending the support to not just the Tamil Youth Fellowship, but to all 4 fellowship streams of the Urban Alliance on Race Relations. This is important work. Having racialized people walk the corridors of power is no longer needed. It's a no-brainer. And I think we're here for the long haul, and we're excited to continue to support the Tamil Youth Fellowship, TiPS, and the Tamil Civic Action. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumaran. And if you could see, I'd be blushing right now. But really, it's Kumaran's footsteps that I have been following. For those of you that don't know, he did pass the torch down to me as part of leading the Tamils in Public Service Organization. And now that torch has been divided and passed over to Jasmine and Melvin. So the organization continues to run in good hands. But thank you so much, Kumaran, for bringing in those remarks. So that really wraps up this portion in terms of talking about the Tamil Youth Fellowship. Really encourage you to reach out if you'd like to learn more about how you can support in whatever capacity that is. Definitely always looking for sponsors, because that means, more opportunities for more fellows, but also, advisors or mentors or being a part of the steering committee to shape the program. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Melvin.
Thanks, Roshani. And yes, folks want to continue to read more about the Tamil Youth Fellowship or learn how to get involved, you could take a look at that in our link tree as well too, that we've shared earlier, where you'll find some details on how to connect with the program and just read more about the initiative as well too. So thank you folks for speaking about the Tamil Youth Fellowship. Shifting gears, we wanted to have a discussion around our theme with Tamil organizations that we partnered with and continue to partner with, that are remembering the past, celebrating where we are, and that are looking to the future. So we've invited these organizations that are pushing boundaries in our community, that again have partnered with TiPS in previous events, and we have representation from Pearl, from Tamil Rights Group, from UNBU, and from Conduit. So we'll have 4 speakers joining us today from each of these organizations, and I'll do a quick introduction of all of them once before getting into a bit of a discussion. First off, we have Archana, who is the Executive Director of Pearl. They bring together research, advocacy, and activism to promote and protect the human rights of Tamil people in the northeast of Sri Lanka. Archana is currently pursuing her LLM at the University of Victoria. She received her BA honors from the University of Toronto in Peace, Conflict, and Justice Studies, and her JD from the University of Windsor, where she was a Transnational Law and Justice Network Fellow. Prior to embarking on her role at Pearl, she practiced labor and employment law. Next up, we have Kapana, representing Tamil Rights Group. Their organization further strengthened advocacy for transitional justice and universal jurisdiction for Ulam Tamils through leveraging international law, expanding global diplomacy, and defunding their civil liberties within Sri Lanka. She migrated to Canada in 1980 after being displaced during the 1983 anti-Tamil pogrom while residing in Colombo. Since then, she's been a long-time advocate for human rights issues and strives to ensure accountability and justice for Ulam Tamils. Next up, we have a Bitnia from Anbu. They are a charity that works with those impacted by childhood sexual abuse within the Tamil community and aims to respond to sexual violence through culturally and linguistically appropriate programs and services. She's been a part of AMBU for over 2 years as their social media coordinator and works toward raising awareness and supporting open dialogue on childhood sexual abuse, while also building capacity in our community to continue these important conversations. Lastly, we have Kumran, who we've also just heard from. Again, a special shout out to Kumran as he's one of the founders of Tamils in Public Service. But as his role in Conduit, their mission is to shift the diaspora engagement from charity to sustainability, from aid to economic development, and build knowledge economies. He's an experienced public sector professional who has progressively had senior roles in the Ontario Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, the Ministry of Solicitor General, and the Ministry of the Attorney General. He's currently on leave from the OPS as he's currently the strategic advisor for 369, a global incorporated, rapidly growing business conglomerate with interest in education, training, financial services, creative industries, and philanthropy. So I want to thank you all for being here today, and I'm going to start with Archana with our discussion question. And the discussion question is, in addition to, of course, telling us about your organization, who you're representing, how does this theme for the event, remembering the past, celebrating where we are, and looking to the future, how does this theme resonate with you, and how does your organization or work endeavor to accomplish one or all of these aspects? Just on mute there, Archana.
Hi, Archana. Just up in the top right-hand corner of your screen, there should be a microphone button in your one, and it should be without a line through it.
Okay, we'll work on the back end to sort that out in the chat. In the meantime, I'll pass it to Kapana to kick it off then.
I'm trying to unmute as well.
Oh, you're
good. You're good.
Okay, because it's rolling saying it's unmuting, so maybe that's what's happening to Archana. No? Okay, well, I'll go while she gets through these technical difficulties. Thank you to Tamils in Public Service for this opportunity to speak here today. As mentioned, my name is Ketpana Nagendra, and I am the official spokesperson and secretary for Tamil Rights Group. Tamil Rights Group is a nonprofit organization registered in Markham, Ontario. I'm based actually in Vancouver, British Columbia, but I grew up in Ontario. And I was very happy to speak on this theme about remembering the past and celebrating where we are. And I wanted to kind of give a personal story about my journey here in Canada. I came here in the mid to late 80s and grew up in a small town in southern Ontario called Amherstburg. Maybe you may know where it is or don't know where it is. Population 8,500. And my family of 4 was the only Brown family or the only Tamil or Sri Lankan family in that entire small town. And so growing up, I really struggled to showcase my identity, to learn more about my identity. So in this theme, I'm remembering my past, and I am so, I would say jealous in a sense that the generation today has a lot of these services and the ability to celebrate our Tamil heritage, our traditions, and our cultures in such a broad spectrum in so many various media platforms. And I feel like I was deprived of that opportunity growing up here in Canada in a small town and not in Ontario. And so I wanted to share that, it is a privilege to be here today to speak at a Tamil heritage event. And I'm so glad that we're celebrating where we are today as a community. We've gone so far in our ability to showcase who we are as a community and really shine a light on all of our accomplishments. So I'm really grateful that we're celebrating that. And how do we move past that? Do we end here? No, that's not where we end. We need to move forward. And that's where Tamil Rights Group kind of started. As a group of individuals, we came together, and we're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary this month. We launched a year ago this month, and we came together as a team. And we may only be 1 year in its inception, but our team, a multi-generational team with over 40 years of experience in human rights advocacy, came together and said, you know, there is some great work being done in terms of Tamil advocacy for our human rights, for the issues of the Tamil people in the North and East. But what's really missing? What more can we do as an organization? I remember 12 years ago, we protested on the streets of Toronto, on the Gardner Expressway in frustration, and the international community did not listen to what we had to say. And 12 years later, we are here, and what has happened? And that is the piece that was missing in the puzzle. There was really no tangible action taken against the Sri Lankan government and the regime, and that's where Tamil Rights Group comes in. We do a lot of advocacy work, yes, regarding the atrocities that happened and are happening, continuing to happen against the Tamil people. But the extra element there is, what are we doing about it? And that is leveraging international law to actually hold people accountable. And I'll share some of the work that we're doing, in which we are doing to achieve this, and we've had a great milestone in just the 1 year alone. So in the 1 year, what we've been able to accomplish is we've developed a strong international team, a global network of volunteers who have come together to do 3 things: leverage international law, expand global diplomacy, and to defend civil liberties. We have a strong legal team as well of volunteers, and these are lawyers, professionals, law students, who are supporting our work and the work with our human rights lawyer, David Mattis, who many of you may know has 40 years of experience as a human rights lawyer. We've set up a law hub, or a student hub, in Sweden at the Lund University of students, non-Tamil students.
Kapana, are you good?
My computer's gone white, so I'm just wondering what's happening.
Oh, we could still hear you and see you, so feel free to continue if you can.
Sorry about that. My screen went white, so I was just wondering. Okay, and so I'll continue. And we've also been able to, we now are a client of a large international law firm. They've taken us on as a client, of a pro bono client. There will be more to come on that, so I just wanted to kind of mention that as well. And the major things that we've been working on in the last year, and one that's very relevant to Ontario, to Canadian citizens, as you know about Bill 104 and the Genocide Awareness Week education bill, which came in to act last year of May. But there are actually 2 parties who are challenging this bill within the courts of Ontario. And it's going to proceed to a case, and Tamil Rights Group has retained a lawyer, and we are going to intervene in this matter, as we feel that it's very important that the community has a voice in this case to say that Bill 104 needs to be protected. And so Tamil Rights Group is getting involved in that as well. And the major milestone that we achieved within this last year is, as an organization, we made a submission to the International Criminal Courts. So this is the first time that a Canadian organization has submitted such a communication to the International Criminal Courts. And we are asking the prosecutor of that court to start an independent investigation into crimes of deportation. For those on the call who are not familiar with the International Criminal Courts, and I myself not being a lawyer, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. The International Criminal Court is governed by the Rome Statute, and countries are signatory to this statute, and the most heinous crimes can be tried within this court. Sri Lanka, however, is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, and in this particular case, we've taken the precedent case of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, and the case in which they fled persecution to a third-party country, Bangladesh, And in that particular case, the prosecutor said that the crime of deportation ended in a third party, which was Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is a signatory to the Rome Statute, so therefore can be tried under the criminal courts. And so using that precedent, we have outlined Article 15 submission to the courts. Similarly, the case or the crime of deportation also happened to our Tamil people at the end of 2009, in which they fled to many state parties like Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and the crime of deportation ends in those state parties. And therefore, we're asking the prosecutor to start an independent investigation and to bring those accountable to justice in that court. So we're really excited about this opportunity to really take tangible action and to leverage the international laws that are available to us. And so I just wanted to kind of outline two things that we're working on really right now that are moving really fast for us as an organization. But there are many other initiatives. You can learn more about us through our website or getting in contact with one of us. But I think that's where this puzzle fits into the theme of Tamils in Public Services event today about Tamil Heritage Month. And this is how we're looking to the future. The future of Tamil heritage, or the future of our Tamil community, is justice and accountability for the crimes against our people. And that's why it's important in the work that I do with Tamil Rights Group, and also with a lot of the work that the organizations here that are represented here today and the others in this field are working on. So I would really like to, at this time, thank Tamils in Public Service for the opportunity to speak here today, to share my personal story, to share the work of Tamil Rights Group, and to commend you on this great event, and wish you luck on your future events, and hope that we can work together in the future as well. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thanks, Kalpana. And I'm sure this won't be the last we've heard from Tamil Rights Group as well, too. So we really appreciate you being here and sharing with us today. I think we'll turn back to Archana. I think she got her mic sorted. So Archana, over to you.
Archana, I think we just have to give it a second. I think it just takes, there it goes. It should be on now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Gotcha now, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and to speak with you all today. And happy Tamil Heritage Month. My name is Archana Ravichandiran, and I am the Executive Director of People for Equality and Relief in Lanka, and we go by Pearl. I am joining today's celebration from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen people and of the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanic people, whose historical relationships with this land continues to this day. And so for me, when I think about celebrating Tamil Heritage Month, which to me is a celebration of the grit, perseverance, and courage of Tamil folk, it gives me, I think it's really important that I think it's really important that we also remember the history of colonization, dispossession, and genocide that exists on this land as well. I think we need to be really intentional as Tamil people who have come to this land fleeing genocide and violence, to think about what our duties and responsibilities are as settlers and as treaty people in our ongoing relationship with the land and with the Indigenous people who have lived and taken care of this land for millennia. And so whenever I think about, the thousands of Tamils that have come to Canada and have found safe haven, I always question, and I suggest that you guys think about it too. What are our duties? Are our duties to the government, or are they to the land itself? And how can we participate in that reciprocal relationship in a meaningful way? So as I was saying, it gives me great pleasure to participate in this conversation and to celebrate Tamil Heritage Month. Thanks to TiPS for this opportunity to talk about Pearl and to reflect on what it means to remember the past, celebrate where we are now, and look to the future. Pearl is a woman-led, volunteer-driven organization based in DC, but we have people all across the world, dedicated to advancing issues of justice, accountability, and self-determination for Tamils. It was started by young activists in 2005 towards the latter part of the armed conflict in Sri Lanka in response to the extreme violence and human rights violations that saw the killing of tens of thousands of our people and the attempted destruction of our freedom and our identity. So Pearl has since then engaged in advocacy and legal accountability efforts with various governments and organizations around the world in our quest for justice and accountability, and to be a progressive voice for human rights, dignity, and self-determination. So I work with a team of Tamil activists from across the world in advancing our cause. And it really is incredible to see Tamil voices from as far away as Australia, Switzerland, and the US. We have someone in Belgium, work closely together with Tamil voices on the ground in this larger struggle for justice and accountability. But also, I think it's a larger sort of imagining of what a free, liberated world can look like for Tamils and the possibilities that exist in the future. And so this is how we engage in public service for our people. And it gives me a great deal of inspiration knowing that even young Tamils, many of them who grew up in the diaspora, are dedicated to this cause of justice and accountability and are willing to do this work, often juggling their regular work and family responsibilities as well, just because of the passion that they have for our people. And so some of my Pearl colleagues haven't even been back home, but they're so tied to the land and the community. And I think that's such a powerful thing. So in addition to our advocacy work, where we participate in policy conversations, strategic advice, and agenda setting with various levels of government, we also engage with members of our community by, for example, conducting research and writing reports on ongoing issues such as militarization and the singleization of Tamil lands. We run a reading group on the history of the Tamil struggle, the Tamil 101 sessions, and we also do public advocacy initiatives as well. So I hope that the work Pearl does continues to inspire young Tamils for years to come, and that they continue to take this work forward. And so for me, that is the crux of this whole theme of our celebration. This is also what I'm writing my LLM on, so I'm like really passionate about it. But what I've sort of been learning is that Tamils have been articulating their dreams, hopes, and wishes for land, community, family, development, freedom, rights, and liberation since the time of independence. So I think one just needs to look at the protests that were happening in the 1950s and 1960s and compare them to the protests that are happening right now in Ulam to see that fierce advocacy for rights and freedom are a very core part of our being. So I think the ways in which we have expressed our quest for freedom have changed over the years, but the heart of it rings true. And that heart and passionate commitment to freedom is what I am most proud of in my Tamil identity. It is what I'm choosing to celebrate this Tamil Heritage Month. And I hope we never lose that. And I don't think that we will, given just how passionate our community is and the young folk are as well. So I just wanted to end by saying, whenever we hear news from back home or we despair at what feels like there's just been no progress, I'm constantly reminding myself of the resilience and history that is a thread that runs throughout our community. 2022 is going to be an important year for Sri Lanka. So, for example, there will be updates on international efforts on accountability at the UN Human Rights Council this year. There's a renewed discussion on sanctions and trade regimes and how to hold Sri Lanka accountable. Pearl, like Tamil's rights group, has been turning to venues such as the ICC to articulate innovative arguments for legal accountability. So the momentum is still there, and I encourage everyone to continue to stay up to date, support these organizations and us through your donations, to stay involved and to stay hopeful. I remind myself that Tamils have struggled, strived, and succeeded, and we will continue to do so. So I hope that, you know, I and Pearl can continue to count on your support as well as we do this work. You can go visit our website and find more information about us. I'm always happy to chat as well. And it really is a privilege to share this space and time with you. And I thank you for everything. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Archana. And yeah, definitely really appreciate all of Pearl's efforts and your efforts as well too. I always find myself going to Pearl for credible information as well too, and leveraging the information you folks share as well too. So it's greatly appreciated. And with that, I'll pass it to Abithani from Ambu.
Hi everyone, I'm Abithani Salvaraja. I hope you can hear me.
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, I am one of the social media coordinators at NBU, and I would like to thank Tamils in Public Service for this opportunity to speak here on this platform today. I'll start it off with what NBU is. So Abuse Never Becomes Us is a charity organization that works with those impacted by childhood sexual abuse within the Tamil community, and we aim to respond to sexual violence through culturally appropriate programs and services. Our story begins back in 2015, where our co-founder Jenny's disclosure as a survivor of childhood abuse sparked a lot of responses from people in the community, a lot of disclosures of their own stories, and a shared interest for having conversations regarding this issue. The roots of NBU started from a way to search for ways to address trauma and violence in the Tamil community, and we hope to provide healing and empowerment through holistic support, resources, and advocacy on behalf of Tamils all around the world who've been impacted by CSA. As a part of the Tamil diaspora, we can identify and relate to the Tamil community's historical and present trauma, and we believe in building capacity through our healing. When we think about the past, there is a reason why our communities suffer from medical health concerns, addictions, and mental health. It's so important that we're remembering the past, remembering where we come from, and the things that our community has been through, as have been mentioned by those that spoke before me. But it's also important to understand how trauma manifests itself and how it's a huge component in overcoming a lot of these challenges. As we're here today celebrating Tamil Heritage Month, we believe that it's important to celebrate the victories, big and small, while we acknowledge what got us here today and think about those that didn't have the opportunity to be here. We're extremely privileged to be on this land belonging to the Indigenous community on Turtle Island and hope to create a future where we can address the Tamil community's past trauma, live in the present, and strive for a better future. The taboo and stigma associated with abuse, as well as the intergenerational ripple effect of abuse, is rampant within the Tamil communities, as it is within many communities. We hope that we're here to help implement these healing methods that are specific to our community and shift how our community responds to sexual violence. At NBU, we hope that we can create a safe space for others to acknowledge their own experiences and begin their healing. Currently, we have one-on-one peer support for survivors of sexual violence and childhood sexual abuse, where we aim to help survivors understand and implement boundaries, consent, and address their trauma. Many in this field of work tend to undermine the potential that we have to create change, but it's so important that we remember that reaching out for help is a rarity unless someone's actually ready, and it's one of the first steps forward to healing. It can make huge changes in someone's life when things start to connect, when the dots start to connect with their trauma. Things start to make sense, and we hope that NBU can be there to support the Tamil community with this healing while taking a culturally supportive lens. We also run the NBU Peer Champions program, which is a workshop that runs about 2 to 3 times a year. And we hope through this workshop, we're able to increase knowledge and awareness on sexual violence, enhance communication skills, and provide practical knowledge for post-secondary students. We also have a lot of social media and outreach projects going on. These are constantly evolving and changing based on the community's needs. Last year, we were able to host a virtual poetry event with 12 women and LGBTQ identifying folks. We also have yoga wellness events where we focus on prioritizing healing. A lot of times, especially in the Tamil language, we might not have the words, or even if we have the words, we don't know the words to describe the trauma or violence in our native tongue, and that can be a huge cutoff in sharing our experiences. And I think a big way to deal with that is finding other ways to channel, finding other ways to heal the hurt that people have experienced. And for us, we believe that activities like art or yoga are a way to begin this process. In 2018, tailored to this response, we had our event Oli, where we were able to create a platform for those that are survivors of trauma and those that were impacted with loved ones who either experienced trauma or childhood sexual abuse, where they were able to speak on their experiences through art, dance, spoken word, or whatever other medias that they chose. As we sit here for Tamil Heritage Month, we celebrate so many of the accomplishments and milestones that we've been able to make as a community and as an organization in this space. And in NBU's future, we see a space where women and families escaping violence are able to go. We hope that one day we will have a culturally sensitive room where children are able to make disclosures and we're able to educate the upcoming generations on childhood sexual abuse, but also create a space where people are able to go, where people are able to share their story and people are able to heal. We want to see a space in our community where we see ourselves represented and we see life beyond trauma, where life beyond the pain that people have experienced is able to be understood, is addressed, and it's filled with healing in the near future. We hope that we can build capacity through collaborations and partnerships similar to others that we've had with Tamils in Public Service and ADEA and many other Tamil organizations within the community. We're extremely grateful for everyone that stood by our organization this far and hope to create transformative work and change that will impact future generations to come.
Thank you. And you folks are creating that change as well too. And we really appreciate partnering with you folks in the past as well too. And I know we'll look forward to doing that in the future as well too. And last but not least, I'll pass it to Kumran.
Thank you, Melvin. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இன்றைய தமிழ் மரபு திங்கள் ஒன்று கூடலுக்கு என அழைத்த டிப்ஸ் நண்பர்களுக்கு கம்யூனிட்டியின் சார்பாக எனது நன்றிகளை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்ள நான் கடமைப்பட்டிருக்கிறேன். I just want to, at the outset, recognize Deputy Richardson, who still is so patiently with us, listening to all of this wonderful things. I still remember early on when a few of us had this crazy idea for a Tamils in Public Service Network. She was one of the first few people we approached, and she made it to that infamous Hard Rock Cafe event, and the rest, as they say, is history. And a real privilege for those of you who don't know Deputy Kulendran, not just because she's a woman of color in the position that she's in, but her general story in public service, her professional and leadership journey is nothing short of amazing. So really nice to see you here, Renu, and you staying engaged with TiPS. I bring greetings on behalf of Hamsha Patnathan, our chair at Conduit. It's an honor once again to share this platform with some amazing organizations. Pearl, whose research is mandatory reading for our volunteers at Conduit. Anbu, who has actually led trauma-informed facilitation training for the interns we place on the ground, and obviously Tamil Rights Group, which is doing some incredibly important work in a very short period of time that I'm very excited to see happen. I'm trying to organize my thoughts in terms of my remarks, but maybe I'll start with the personal story. In 2009, I was about 2 years into the Ontario Public Service. I was an analyst in an ADM's office at the Ministry of the Attorney General. And I remember during lunchtime, I would sneak off to the US consulate on University Avenue for the protests that had erupted in 2009 near the end of the armed conflict, at least, or the civil war in Sri Lanka. And I remember being so, there's big sections of the community very mobilized, and I remember feeling a bit powerless because there was this dual existence that I had between being an Ontario public servant and all of these things that were happening in the community, and I always wanted to see how can we bridge that gap. It took me a long time, but eventually I think TiPS was one of the ways in which I was able to come to terms with that and really understand that ultimately, public policy and public service and community service are two sides of the same coin. And so, I am envious, as somebody else said, that there are networks like TiPS now where people can easily flow in and out of community work and public policy work. I think being a public servant in the OPS has really helped me tremendously in approaching community work, whether it is political acuity, whether it's stakeholder management, whether it is policy analysis, programmatic implementation, just that strategic oversight and understanding downstream impacts of the policy that you're setting even as a community organization, and the broader stakeholder outreach that one needs to do as policy is formulated. I think it's critical, and that's training that I have to thank the Ontario Public Service for. With that said, in terms of going back to the themes of tonight's conversation, what is Conduit? Conduit was another idea that a few of us had some years ago. The essence of it is very much about providing a pathway for those interested in engaging in the development conversation about what is going on back home with Tamil-speaking communities and other minority communities in Sri Lanka through the lens of sustainable development. So since launching in 2014, we've placed I would say just over 30 to 35 professionals, many of them young professionals, some of them from the broader public sector as educators, as social workers, and other professions back home, especially in the northern east or the traditional Tamil homelands of the Ulam people. And that has been sort of the main kind of focus of what Conduit has done. Our essential thesis is diasporas need to be leveraged in multiple ways. Just as much the political aspirations and the struggle for Tamil rights in the political sense is important. The development conversation needs to be kept front and center as well. And to that extent, we've placed a lot of different people, have had strategic partnerships with different community-based organizations back home. And many of our focus areas are in education, in research, in green innovation, and entrepreneurship. Some of you probably are hearing my 3-year-old scream downstairs, so we'll see how much of that carries through. But in any event, what I wanted to really speak to here today is really this intersection between the work of Tamils in public service or public service and the work that can happen back home. I remember a time when I was in the public service that the former Deputy Minister, Angie Koch, who some of you will recognize, actually partnered up with the Institute of Public Administrators of Canada, IPAC, to lead a kind of a Ugandan public service revitalization program that the World Bank led. And truth be told, I have to confess that one of the motivations that I had and managed to convince other people to start TiPS was to ultimately see how we can gather up resources in the public service and deploy them in issues back home. There's a real tremendous need for public sector capacity building in every sense of the word, whether it's at the municipal level or the provincial level, or in some instances the central government level, right? But there are so many issues, especially kind of looking at the kind of training that was done by the Ontario Public Service in Uganda, whether it is gender mainstreaming, looking at center-periphery relations or intergovernmental relations, parliamentary reform, setting up a chief minister's office in terms of how the cabinet works, how Treasury board would work. There's a lot of great learning, I think, that a lot of very talented, smart people who are part of Tamils in public service can bring to the work that I certainly think Conduit is doing back home, and hopefully in the years to come, or rather the months to come. We don't really have time. I think Archana spoke eloquently about really the downhill sort of trend in Sri Lanka for all people who believe in a rights struggle. And so we don't have years, we're looking at months. And so my clarion call to action for people watching this is, I think there are tremendous organizations that are focused on very important work in the diaspora. I think my colleague Murali Srinathas, had an op-ed earlier this week about the need for inclusive Tamil excellence in Canada, which is true, because as much as we celebrate success and celebrate the present, celebrate professionals here, there are big swaths of our community still facing so many barriers and challenges and disadvantages. So there's a lot of work to be done even within our diaspora community in Canada. But I think, and I'm always going to be saying this, I hope that those of you who are interested in community work understand that We have to, by focusing on on what we have in the diaspora, we are inevitably connected to the issues back home. We are children of the diaspora ultimately, even those of you who are second generation, there is that connection always. So as much as you focus on issues here, I hope that that you set aside some time and effort to understand and to engage ultimately and bring your knowledge, your skills and resources and talent to the issues back home. It can be development, it can be political. I think all paths lead to the same end, ultimately for our people who wish for autonomy and political freedom. And you know, there's no wrong path in my view. I think apathy is the only wrong path. I hope that all of you take some time to learn more about the work of amazing organizations like Pearl and TRG and Conduit and just a lot of great organizations out there. Pick your stream. If anyone wants to learn more about how to engage through the development lens, I hope you reach out to me or reach out to Conduit. One last thing, just to kind of show you what I mean by development and political being the same sides, or both sides of the same coin. If you just take food security, like when the pandemic started in 2020, within a span of 5 weeks, we raised about $110,000, and we were able to provide immediate humanitarian food relief or poverty relief to about 8,000 families, especially in the North and East, but throughout the country. And this included people who wouldn't have access to resources. These included sort of daily wage earners, LGBT communities who are not part of the mainstream within even the island itself. So we went from jumping into humanitarian action into then creating a food innovation or organic innovation lab that we set up last year, along with some foundational support from the Canadian High Commission as well as private entities in Germany. So once again, this is about not just humanitarian immediate short-term relief, but really how do you build a sustainable model of engagement that ultimately invests in people so that they can start advocating for themselves through development, through politics, through economic empowerment and what have you. And just to show the full sort of spectrum, as we got into the organic lab innovation lab work, one of the issues that kept coming up is about land rights. The fact that the government of Sri Lanka illegally has expropriated so many Tamil lands. So this is why I said there is no one way of looking at an issue. It is very layered. And I think no matter how you choose to enter the conversation about what is my role as a public policy professional back home, I think there are many layers to it. The only thing I would say is don't hesitate, just start now, start somewhere, and eventually the path, your own personal path for how you can contribute back home will open up. Thank you again, TiPS, for having me on, and would love to have any questions that anyone has about the work of Conduit. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kumran. And thank you to Archana, Kapana, Abitni, and Kumran for all your thoughts and reflections during this discussion. And be sure to read more about Pearl, Tamil Rights Group, UNBU, and Conduit, as they're doing really great work with the community, as you've just heard. Be sure to connect with them if you're interested as well, too. Last but not least, I now wish to introduce Siva. In his day job, Siva is the executive director for YUSC, a nonprofit corporation managing over 25,000 square feet of community and commercial space at York University. The main reason we got Siva to join and conclude the event today is Siva serves as a project chair for the Tamil Community Center. And for those who don't know, last year there was approval by all three levels of government from Canada, Ontario, and the City of Toronto, and partners invested in the Tamil Community Center for the Tamil Community Center in Scarborough. I'm really excited about this project, but who better to speak to this than Siva? So Siva, over to you. Siva, are you able to unmute and turn your video on there for us?
So I am not sure if he is or not. I have requested him to turn his camera on, and yet it doesn't seem to be filtering through. So I'm not sure exactly what is causing that. Oh, and I believe he's just he must be experiencing some technical difficulties because he has just removed himself, and I'm sure he's just going to try and come back in again.
Sure, perfect. Well, let's give him a moment to do so. In the meantime, I'll just run through a quick list of thank yous as Siva is joining back us on. This event really couldn't have happened without the support from Catherine from IDO, Rob and Jason from the team's live crew as well. And a huge shout out to our TiPS volunteer team. We really appreciate all the behind the scenes work you put in. Special shout out to Ramanan, Umayanga, Rumya, Manivali, Lakshmi, Rashani, Satish, Navita, Janani, Jarusha, Kaushika, Sharon, and my co-chair Jasmine Dunston as well too, for helping you make this a successful, for making this a successful event. And of course, a special thank you to all our speakers for joining us here today. I really appreciate your time and dedication. We're going to give Siva a moment to try to join back on. Siva, are you there with us today? And then we'll pass you the baton to conclude this evening as well too.
Siva has not rejoined at this moment.
Okay, we'll give him a moment, and then if he's not,
I'll tell you as soon as he's there.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, Siva sent me a note. He's just trying to reset, so if we give him a sec or two to come back on, hopefully he'll be able to join us and conclude this evening for us. Yeah, appreciate everyone's patience. Apologies for this tech error. So, but yeah, just sent me a message. He said he was on. We saw him in the backdrop the whole time as well too. It was just, we're not sure what happened there, but yeah, we'll just give him a minute to relaunch his computer, and he could again just conclude the evening.
Maybe we'll just play a little bit of music while we're waiting.
right, so apologies for that, folks. Yeah, we had a bit of technical difficulties with Siva there. Maybe we'll reconnect with him afterwards and share some information about the Tamil Community Center, because it's a fantastic project that's happening within the community. But again, yeah, special thank you to all our speakers for joining us here today. We really appreciate your time and dedication to helping run this event, sharing your contributions and lived experiences with all of us here today. Again, this event couldn't have happened without the support from Catherine from IDEO, Rob, Jason, and the team's live crew, and of course our TiPS volunteer team. Be sure to join our mailing list to stay up to date with future events, and we'll drop the link in chat. You will also find it in our Instagram and bio and our LinkedIn as well too. Oh, and I do see Siva popped on. So do you want to give your mic a quick check?
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. There we go. Okay, so I've done my conclusion, so I'll pass it to you, and then we'll adjourn once you're done, if that's all right. So Siva, over to you.
No problem. First of all, thank you, everyone. Happy Tamil Heritage Month to everybody who's on the call. I've been listening for the last 45 minutes, and my sincere appreciation to all the organizations that have joined today and others who could not, and the work that you folks are doing. I'm here actually to speak about a project that I actually think is in alignment with the various projects and work plans that everyone is working on, and we hope that our project can serve as a catalyst in the form of providing much needed space and other amenities that other organizations could utilize to further their own mission statements and further enhance the benefit to the general community at large. I do have a bit of a brief presentation. I know I have about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to run through it quickly. And the project that I want to speak about today, and I hope everyone can see my screen. Is that true?
They will in just a second. Here it comes up right now. They can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, great. The project that I'm here to speak about is actually the Tamil Community Center. So my name is Subramaniam. I'm actually the chair of the Tamil Community Center. And I guess on a personal level, my passion is actually in creating spaces that contribute to community capacity building. And I think community capacity building in various forms can mean many things, but ultimately it leads to the betterment of our general community across social, cultural, political lines. So we hope that this project can work in alignment and advance the various missions that other organizations have, as well as creating a much needed space here in Canada for the diasporic Tamil community that lives here. The Tamil Community Center project actually started about 3 years ago, and it was actually created by several organizations, and they had struck a steering committee, which I am a member of. And we had gone to work about 3 years ago, and we wanted essentially to create a space, and that's what we're working toward. We're trying to create a space to address the growing needs of our community. And I believe a previous presenter had spoken to the need that despite our community advancing, very quickly, given the relative short time our community has been in this country, there is still a substantial amount of our community that still endures conditions of poverty, et cetera. And this project actually helps to address those specific needs. The challenges that we're trying to address is we're trying to construct a Tamil Community Center in the Northeast Scarborough area. That is where the highest concentration of our community resides. Scarborough is the highest number of working poor in the GTA as well. And the several conditions that lead to that lead to a poor quality of life. Some of the symptoms that we'll see here is, lack of public housing, difficulty finding accessible and affordable community spaces, lack of availability and affordability of services, need for cultural competency and knowledge in service providers, lack of language resources and translation services, high work precarity, long commute times, and these all contribute, in our opinion, to a poor quality of life. And our mission essentially, and what we've seen based on research as well as our own lived experience and professional experiences, is we want to build a dynamic, innovative, multi-purpose and non-denominational facility that can incorporate spaces and services to help address the current and growing needs of our community. And with this project, we hope to do that through the provision of recreational facilities, cultural facilities, multi-purpose spaces, And we carry this project with a strong understanding that it has to also be a valuable resource to Indigenous, Black, Caribbean, and other racialized communities who also call Toronto home, and who also share similar trajectories to our community as well. 311 Staines Road. So again, about 2.5 years ago, we worked very closely with the City of Toronto, and we're happy to report that the Toronto City Council actually unanimously approved 311 Staines Road as a future location for the Tamil Community Center. It's just north of 4 acres large. It is coincidentally located at the epicenter of where our community actually lives in the GTA, or the highest concentration of which is great because it means that when this project is complete, hundreds, if not thousands, of Tamil-speaking families are actually within walking distance to this facility. Consultations have also always been a leading drive in how we conduct this project, despite having various range of expertise on our board and the committee. We always want to be data-driven, and we always want to make sure that the community has an opinion and insight into decision-making for this project. So this was actually done through a series of consultations. The first consultations that we had organized was in the summer of 2019, and that's what we asked the general community, and about over 1,000 community members participated in this survey, and they told us what was important to them in a community center. And the main feedback that came back to us was an auditorium, mental health services, a gym, history archival, genocide museum, library, senior services, women's services, childcare services. And we're very happy with this because it was in alignment with what our research was showing. And based on this first consultation, we then engaged in a second consultation where we were actually able to survey over 150 community organizations and service providers. Many of the organizations that are on this call, I would assume, actually participated in the survey. And it's just validating what the general community said and trying to strike that alignment on making sure that we're moving the project forward in a way that not only the general community as participants will use the facility, but our hope always has been that the Tamil Community Center be a partnered approach, that organizations that already exist can actually utilize those spaces and work with us in partnership to activate and program those spaces. And we're very happy that majority of our organizations actually do service the Toronto York region and Durham area, and 311 Staines Road being on the intersection of those three regions was great. And the second question that's kind of reflected here is majority of the organizations that filled out the survey validated that they would actually use the main programming spaces that was identified by the general community. With the consultations, with the confirmation of the land, it gave us confidence to move ahead with the pre-design study. All the information that I'm articulating today has already been released publicly. I'm sure many of you have seen it. And when we engage in the pre-design study, we followed it with 5 principles. One is that the design had to be functional and consistent with the programming that the community had identified as important to them. 2, that it had to respect the natural environment, our commitment to sustainability. 3, that it has to respect Indigenous history, priorities, and opportunities for placemaking. And we're very happy to share that over the last couple of years, we've had many and very active conversations with both nations that represent the parcel of land that the community center will be constructed on, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Huron-Wendat peoples. Both nations are very happy that we're carrying on with this project, and not only have endorsed the project, but have also endorsed the general direction of the design as well. And 4, that the design has to provide solutions to potential local residents' concerns. We are constructing in a neighborhood. The design that has been circulated is one that is conscious of noise, as well as what amenities can be provided to the general public, as well as the Tamil community. And 5, that because it is a Tamil community center and our community has a varying range of opinions, etc., which are naturally found in communities like ours, that we wanted to find a non-denominational focus on Tamil culture and history. And again, I'm just going to move through this very quickly. The 5 inspirations that we use for the design. 1 is a notion of the central courtyard that can be found both in ancient as well as modern Tamil architecture. 2, the notion of the landscape. And here we derive inspiration from the Sangam period, and specifically the notion of the Tinne and the notion of the landscapes. And we're using here Munle, which means forest, and Kuranchi, which is hills, which are 2 of the landscapes identified in that period. Which also resonate with the Rouge National Park, which is adjacent to this property. 3, the notion of the inner and outer, also from the Sangam period, that the development of individuals, the development of the self, as well as the development of our relationships and how we present ourselves to the world. And 4, the notion of a ship. Here we wanted to pay homage not just to our ancient history, but also to reflect on our modern history of migration, refuge, and asylum. And I know a couple of organizations that do a lot of good work have spoken to this already on this call. And we've actually been able to resemble or design the second floor of the facility to resemble the hull of a ship, and that's where we hope to encapsulate the library, archive, and museum. And 5th, language. Language has been what connects our generations despite migration, despite our diasporas forming. And this specific letter is phonetically unique to the Tamil language, and we found a way to incorporate it into the design of the center itself. So this is the general design of the center in its pre-design stage. And again, just to highlight a few of the points, we've chosen to keep the building low and conscious of its local neighborhood surroundings. Here you see the ship, again, highlighting our migration history. We're contemplating to keep the site as green as possible to increase community usage and also to reach our sustainability goals. And ultimately, we wanted to highlight a center that is intergenerational, that not just our community, but can be a space for all communities in the Northeast Scarborough to use, share, and essentially for us not to just build our own strength as a community, but also to improve our relations with other communities that also call Scarborough home, and to increase cross-communal relationships and understandings of one another. And I think that's ultimately what the project is about and what we are hoping to achieve. And I think in the limited time that I have, the few highlights that I wanted to mention was, 1, that this project has received $26.3 million in government funding from both the federal and provincial governments through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. 2, as of December of 2021, the Tamil Community Center has become a registered charity, and our charitable purposes, in addition to constructing, maintaining, and operating this facility, our secondary purpose in the nature of the event that we're speaking about today is actually to educate the general public about what it is to be Tamil and to promote Tamil culture and history. And I thought that was a very important part that I wanted to highlight, given that this is a Tamil Cultural or Tamil Heritage Month event. And 3, as we move forward this year through our municipal approvals, you will be receiving updates on us as we move the project forward, as we formally launch our fundraising campaign moving into this year. So this project essentially is meant to be a legacy project. It is an intergenerational project. This project can reshape the dynamic of what it means to be Tamil in this country, but also has a dynamic of what it means to be Tamil on the international scale. And to my recollection, a Tamil community center like this does not exist anywhere in the diaspora community anywhere in the world right now, and we're very happy to be moving this project forward. And we thank TiPS for the opportunity to present here today, and we thank our colleagues and other organizations that have joined this call today, and over the 120 organizations that have supported us to this day.
Thanks, Siva. And with that, Rob, over to you.
Okay, sorry. With that, guys, you have been attending tonight's Tamil in Public Service event. We're so glad that you could be here and be part of it tonight. I want to thank all of you for joining. I want to thank those that have been presenting tonight, and of course, our host for the night, Melvin, Christopher. You did a great job, and I think we're going to end the same way we came into the event today. We're going to end with a little bit of music playing at this time. Guys, this is going to end our broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your night. Take care and stay safe.